All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Axiad and Wallix for our discussion on the journey of password cohesiveness, authentication for your privileged accounts. My name is Gary Utley, and I will be your host and moderator for today's event. Today, we're joined by Jerome Becquart, COO of Axiad, Nico Malbranche, pre-sales manager with Axiad, as well as the Wallix team. We have Chad Charter, Wallix VP of Sales, and then Grant Burst, pre-sales for Wallix. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you.
Thanks, Gary.
Before we begin, I would like to encourage everyone to join in on the conversation. Throughout the panel discussion and chat, we'd love to have questions presented to us. What we'll do is take those questions at the end of this chat and answer them accordingly. So let's get started. Businesses today are searching for a way to eliminate passwords and implement really strong passwordless authentication. That's why IT leaders are looking for multi-factor authentication, such as hardware, tokens, and smartphones for many of their privileged and non-privileged users. However, many applications still require and need to be maintained for our system administrator. So how can a robust PAM solution act as the key to the kingdom and secure your privileged users and their credentials? So with that, we're going to start our questions. So we hear a lot about passwordless authentication these days. What does that mean, and why is that important? Jerome, we'll start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Gary. And hi, everyone. So passwordless, for me is, let's take a step back. Typically, there is a perception, or there was a perception that security and ease of use were conflicting, right? That if you wanted to improve security, it implied complexity, it implied a bad user experience. Well, passwordless is, to me, the opposite of that. Passwordless really means security with great ease of use, right? And you can achieve both. There is now a lot of technology, and we'll talk more about it, I'm sure, over the next few questions, that enable you to do that. So passwordless, just to keep it simple, is getting rid of password and replace it by strong authentication method, or MFA, but MFA implemented in a way that it's easy to use. So you don't have to do, password plus something. It's going to be maybe a combination of biometric and a device you have, a PIN or device you have, or just, being there and authenticating. So, and the reason passwordless is important is we all agree password is a big pain point. It's not good from an end user experience, and it's not secure. So we need to get rid of them. How do you get rid of them? With maintaining this, improving security, but also having a great user experience. To me, that's what passwordless is about.
Right. Chad?
I take the same approach as Jerome. You brought up some good points. And I think one of the main things in going with passwordless is when you're looking at your security posture as a whole, trying to, one, make it more secure, but two, make it easier for employees to do their jobs. Because that's the biggest issue when you're looking at enhancing your cybersecurity posture, is that if you make it too complex, people will find a way around it. Hence the reason you find, you can lift up the keyboard, you find passwords, you find them taped to the monitors in the server rooms. So being able to get rid of those with things, such as biometrics and, other MFA approaches, I think is probably the best for all parties involved.
All right, great. So with this passwordless, environment coming, when planning it out, when organizations are planning their passwordless journey, what are some of those challenges that they're going to be faced and should anticipate? We'll start with Jerome.
Yeah. Well, the first step when you want to start this passwordless journey is to really look at your landscape, right? Because passwords are everywhere, and not every password are equal. So on one hand, I've seen, because we've done a lot of implementation over the year at Axiad, and I've seen two extremes. One is I'm going to deal only with one password, let's say Windows authentication or logging to your VPN, and then you only address maybe 10% or 20% of your password problem. The other opposite is I'm going to replace every password from day one, which is also, it's a great idea, but it's not really realistic because some passwords are more difficult than others. So I think the first step, in my experience, is look at what you have, identify the different type of password, the different type of authentication method you can use to replace this password, and define priorities, right? Not everything needs to be addressed day one. So, you need to be able to build some success to say, look, I've got a pass, and you show progress. And then as you go and you get more user on board, because they will see that it's actually a better user experience for them if you do it well, then you can go to the next step. And typically one of the you should look at what is the risk associated to each password. So for example, looking at sysadmin privilege account is typically a step that you should take very early on, because there is more at stake than, let's say, your interns that have a password to get access to part of your intranet. So establish, understand your landscape, identify where you get the best risk reward type of results, and take a phase approach. But you need to plan for the end goal, which is trying to get rid of all of these passwords, but take a phase, a step-by-step approach.
Great. And Chad, what are some of those challenges that you see from organizations, or they should be preparing for when they're looking at that passwordless journey?
I think there's a couple key factors, and I think one of the reasons that Axiad and Wallachs work so well together is the combination of multi-factor authentication and privileged access management, especially when you're looking to go passwordless. Once you get into the building or get into where you're supposed to, because passwordless isn't just about logging into the system. It has so many different uses for many different security applications, and how even physical security, how do you get into the building? So once you're authenticated, what's to stop, okay, they're a trusted employee, but what's to stop them from doing whatever they want once they get inside? So being able to monitor that, and there's so many different ways, but from a privileged access standpoint, you hire a plumber. I always like to use the analogy, Joe the plumber. You hire a plumber to come to your house to do some work. You went to Angie's List or whatever, you got recommendations from friends, so they're reliable. So they're pre-authenticated to be at your house. That's kind of the multi-factor level, is you've done your research, you've hired this person, so they come to your house. Now, typically when they open that front door, they used to see a hallway with 5 or 6 different doors: living room, kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, family room. Doesn't matter. If they're there just to work on the kitchen, why do they need to see the other doors? So this is where privileged access management comes into play with multi-factor authentication. The multi-factor allows them easy access into the house. But once he's there, he shouldn't have free reign. So the privileged access management reduces that with the access control piece, that he only sees one door now, and that's the door marked the kitchen. So that's all he should see. So you take the MFA and the privileged access management, that gets them right where they need to be and no place else.
Great. I think the analogy makes sense. You're letting them in, and they're also letting them into specific things. So that's a very secure way to go approach. With kind of going to the kind of next section of what we're talking about, where organizations are looking to move away from passwords. This is going to go to Axiad's team. What are a few business outcomes for moving to a passwordless environment?
So to me, there is 3 type of stakeholders. So let's talk about the stakeholders, and we'll see the business outcome, but that are impacted when you move away from password into passwordless. The first one, and we've talked about it, are the end users, right? So what we've seen is, because it improves the user experience, when you reach a passwordless state, your end users have a higher level of satisfaction. They are more efficient at their work because they don't need to have to remember password or reset them or change them every 90 days or whatever, right? So we see user satisfaction, which is a change, because if you've dealt with MFA maybe 10, 15 years ago, people were using typically hardware OTP tokens that you had to carry with you, especially if you were in sales or people that are on the field a lot. You have these things, you use them, they work, but it was not fun to use, because sometimes you forget them, sometimes you type the password too late and the OTP too late and so on. Now you get great user experience, the user's happy with it, and it's actually become nearly transparent to them, which is the ideal state. The second set of stakeholders, if you do your password implementation right, is the people who have actually to manage a system, talking about the IT team, as well as the help desk team, that is also a key part of stakeholders. So if you have the right tools there, you need to make sure that that team, the IT team, has all the tools that they need to monitor and manage, and the right skills, right? Because if it's complex, it can be complicated to manage, and it will create more headache for them, and they are going to try to find a way to go around it, or propose a solution. So think about that group of users, as well as what you can do so that they have a solution that is permanent, because the threat landscape keep moving. The solution need to be updated. You need to monitor for threat. So how do you approach that? Which is why we see more and more adoption for cloud-based solutions there, because as the requirement and the skills needed to maintain a password solution is increasingly complex, you probably want to delegate that to people which core skills are to maintain that. And the last piece is, maybe one of the most important, is also the CISO, right? So because today we are all running businesses that you are going to have to prove to your customer, or to the government, or to regulation industry, like if you're in healthcare, for example, or in defense, there is a lot of reporting that you need to do to show that your customer information is protected, your employee information is protected, your IP is protected, and so on, that you are complying with mandates and requirements. So providing the tool and the reporting to the CISOs to simplify their life is very important as well. So you need to think about these three group of users, that the ideal solution should satisfy all of them.
Okay. Yeah, no, that kind of explains there's not just one person benefiting, or the business outcomes. It's kind of a whole spread across the organization. I'm going back to, maybe now we're talking to the business outcomes, the IT team. What are those tools out there that actually replace passwords that that people are talking about, that are really effective in that way, or tools out there that can help?
Yes. So on this, that's probably one of the big challenges. We tend to all get excited about the silver bullet, trying to find the one solution that solve all the problem, one solution that replace all password. The truth today, it doesn't exist. There is not any authentication method, protocol, devices, whatever, that address all of these different use cases that you need to look at, especially if you look at users. And already in the user space, you will have employees, you may have contractors, you may even have customers, and then you have your sysadmins. These tend to be different group of users with different level of requirement. So that adds complexity. But then if you also think about the machine identities that you also need to validate, because there's actually more machine. And when I say machine, it can be a hardware device, but it's also an application, a system, a non-person entity, just to be generic, that is accessing your information, right? Because we are all now working in distributed environment where a lot of your assets are not in your data center. They're in a variety of cloud out there, from Salesforce, Workday, anything on Amazon, Azure, and so on. How do you know who is accessing what? And among all this, you've got your corporate asset, your customer list, your secret recipe, your IP. You need to monitor and address all this. So the machine identity is also a big element.
To watch the full video, click the link below to our Bright Talk channel. For more Axiad content, click subscribe.